those type of environments kind of shape how you approach the game, and it's almost like it's embedded in you at that point that if you want to excel and you want to play at a high level, the amount of work that it takes and the amount of focus and discipline. So I think when I got to high school, I started to see like what I needed to do to really get to that level, and then seeing like how these other kids operated and like the things that they were doing, it just kind of rubbed off on me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Travis Waters, and I designed this podcast to share stories that are worth telling. Whether it's about somebody going from zero to hero, hero to zero, or simply something in between. On today's episode, we're joined by Malcolm, who has spent most of his life playing in basketball, both school, college, and professionally, and then now working on vetted sports. Let's go through that entire timeline and see how he got there right now. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. On today's episode, as you can see, we are joined by Malcolm. For those who may not know you by name or by face, let's just do a quick 10 to 15 second high level overview of what you got going on right now in 2026 here.
Yeah, for sure. We appreciate the opportunity first and foremost. Malcolm Lemmons, former professional basketball player, played overseas for a few years. I'm sure we'll get more into my background and things I did prior. But started Vetted Sports about 3 years ago, which is a media platform that covers sports as an asset class. So really kind of heads down building in this ecosystem of like sports technology and investing, trying to be a value add to people in that ecosystem, and up to a lot of I think interesting things. So happy to talk further.
All right, so what I like to do is kind of go back in your memory as far as your memory allows to the very, very first thing that you had an interest in or a fascination in or knew that you wanted to be when you grew up, and kind of how old were you and what was that first idea?
Definitely basketball. I was born and raised in Washington D.C., which for people who might not know is a hotbed for talent, basketball wise. A lot of great players came out of that area. So it's kind of in the water, man, in the culture, and grew up playing. Probably started for fun maybe around elementary school, and then started taking it seriously. I would say going into maybe eighth, seventh, eighth grade, and had this dream in my head. I saw it as an opportunity to, potentially get paid to do something I love to do. And then also a way of providing for my family. And so that was a dream for the first, 20 years of my life, man, really just, or 20 plus years, just chasing that. 100% focused on, trying to be the best athlete I can be, and seeing where the game could take me.
What do you think was it about when you were a young age and you started having that basketball interest? Was it like just you starting to play with friends and you're like, oh, I like this? Was it like you watching it on TV? What kind of brought that upon you?
So I think originally, so my mother, single parent household. My mom, my brother, grew up with, my mom raising the both of us, and she really put us in sports to keep us out of other things. It was more so, I could end up being in the streets or doing things I shouldn't have been doing. So it was like sports was a way of establishing structure, giving us something to focus on outside of school. And I would say that for the first couple of years, I played soccer first, then football, then basketball was the last sport I tried. And really playing all those sports, it was more just like fun for me. It was a way I could, meet new kids. I moved around a lot as a kid too, so it was, I made a lot of lifelong, relationships and friendships through sports. And I would say I started taking it seriously mainly because I think one, the competitive drive in me. The more I played, the more players I got to play against, the higher level of competition I saw, the more had an urge and a drive to want to excel in basketball specifically. So I think it was a lot of that, but I think initially it was just escapism and just the joy of the sport and just having fun doing something actively.
So I understand the whole uh, feeding off of the fact that you love challenges and you want to versus the higher level talent. But what part of your initial basketball journey, let's just say from your first fascination up until, or let's say right about the college or just getting out of high school, is what at what point, and was it even you or maybe your parent that said, "Oh, you can actually you're above average at this. Like you can actually do something with that." What kind of time frame did that thought come across you?
Good question, man. I would say in middle school, I was definitely above the average because I was taller than a lot of kids. I think I
That
was
helps.
not like I think I was good. I was okay, but I wasn't like there wasn't like I have some friends who in middle school you can tell they were just gonna they had it like it was just God given ability. Like I wasn't that kid. I was taller, a little bit more athletic, played hard, and so I would say it really wasn't until going into high school probably my freshman year in high school, where I really thought I could take the game somewhere. Like my goal was like, all right, Division 1, that was the baseline, and then eventually try to play pro from there. So I had a really I was really fortunate to attend a college prep high school in DC called Gonzaga, and we played a national schedule. We were top 25, 50 in the country every year that I was there, number one in the country my sophomore year in some rankings. So the level of competition there was like top of the top. And I'm coming in, as a freshman, competing with guys who had scholarship offers coming into high school from like Syracuse, Georgetown, Duke. And so being in that environment, having morning practices and workouts where Coach K is in the building or like the coach from Ohio State, like those type of environments kind of shape how you approach the game. And it's almost like it's embedded in you at that point that if you want to excel and you want to play at a high level, the amount of work that it takes and the amount of focus and discipline. So I think when I got to high school, I started to see like what I needed to do to really get to that level. And then seeing like how these other kids operated and like the things that they were doing, it just kind of rubbed off on me.
So I know you kind of said around the middle school time is when you first had your well, of course being taller definitely helps, but you're like, oh, I'm actually pretty decent at this. I know. I mean, clearly we kind of already know that you played competitively in terms of the college ranks and then the professional ranks, but going to college, was there ever a like a plan B put into place? Like if I don't have the opportunity to do this professionally, this is what whether this is what I'm going to school for or this is what plan B is in general.
I would say very loosely. The only other thing that I wanted to do outside of being a professional athlete was being in business in some capacity. So I always kind of had this innate entrepreneurial drive, and I don't know where that comes from because I have no entrepreneurs in my family. But outside of basketball, like I was the kid in middle school who was hustling at recess, selling candy bars and my juice boxes, like that type of mindset of like anything to make a dollar. Like I had that naturally. So I would say like in my mind, I was like, I knew like being an athlete doesn't last forever, right? But like making that transition and separating your identity from that, I think is a completely different process and ball game, so to speak. So I knew I wanted to be in business in some capacity. Didn't know what that looked like. Didn't know how to really approach that. But I would say like from a day in day out perspective, like basketball really was the plan. You know, plan A. It really was no backup. It was no plan B. I was like, I'm going to ride this wave as long as I can. And then when it's over, I'll figure out what I want to do next. And that was really my mindset, I think, up until probably my second year playing overseas, is when I really started to like formulate and think about what I wanted to do next. But kind of like all throughout high school, college, I didn't even really think about anything outside of basketball.
When you say that like business was kind of in the back of your mind, and I know you mentioned loosely during this just the college years at least, were you when you had the opportunity when you knew like, oh, this is realistic, I have actually a real chance of doing this professionally, were you looking with that business kind of in the back of your mind mindset, like how do I take myself as a professional athlete and create like a business around it? Was that something that was going through your mind during that time in the early years after college?
Not at all. I think it was a very different time period than it is now. Like this, when I was playing in college, just 15 years ago. I'm dating myself, feeling a little bit old now. But
Now
yeah, it was
you
15.
you saying that and me being in college before you, that just that just makes me feel a whole lot worse. Oh man. All right, go ahead.
Oh man, no, I'm telling you, time flies. But yeah, I would say like 15 years ago, man, people weren't talking about this dualism of being an athlete and an investor, entrepreneur, creative. Like that started to happen. I would say after I was probably on the back end of my professional career. We really didn't have many examples or role models who like talking about their business ventures and expressing themselves through that. And I would say I give a lot of credit to like LeBron. He kind of set that precedent. And obviously, like social media plays a huge part in that as well, and how that kind of started to emerge in the mid 2010s. And so, um, it for me, I didn't really think of like I could play basketball and do this other thing that I wanted to do, that like, or like build a brand. Like that started to slowly happen on the tail end of my career, as I mentioned. But like during we like that, we didn't have conversations like that in the locker room about business and entrepreneurship. But I know a lot of athletes are doing that these days. So it was just a different time period. And I think, the narrative has shifted, and platforms have shifted, and access and resources and things of that nature. So yeah, it wasn't a thought, but I think athletes have that privilege nowadays, and I would say, a lot of athletes have been able to pave their way and set that bar for the next generation coming up.
I'm curious to focus one more thing on during your college years. I know you were mentioning before of, you went to a school that was top ranked in the entire country, and you're surrounded by these A-lister coaches as well as these five-star recruits and everything. During your time in college, I know we kind of mentioned like when in your life did you know that you can do something with basketball, and you kind of were mentioning the middle school age time. When it came to college, at what point did you have? I know that was your drive of, oh, I can keep riding this wave until see what happens. But when did it like click where it goes, oh, I'm actually going to be a professional basketball player? What was that? Right after college, during college, and what year?
Honestly, it was right up until like my senior year. Like honestly, I went through so many like ups and downs throughout my college career that honestly, like I didn't think like that goal was still, top of mind, but I almost like doubted whether or not it could actually happen because of everything I went through the first 3 years of my college experience. And so I ended up transferring. So I played at Niagara University up in New York for 3 years, and I ended up transferring my senior year to a school out in California, a D2 school called Cal State San Marcos, and ended up having a really good, final year playing in college, and that's what really afforded me the opportunity. But that for the first 3 years of my, college career, I was kind of on the fence of like, man, like this dream is really not what I expected it to be. I'm going through a lot of just like BS headbutts with the coaches and playing time going up and down, injuries. I got sick my sophomore year, so a lot of like setbacks where I thought like I I I, I just figured I wasn't going to be able to achieve that dream based off everything that I was going through at the moment.
So I'm curious. So I'm trying to kind of make sure that I understand like your entire mindset. So I know that this is like number one, I understand this is my goal, this is my passion, this is what I want to do. But during that time, you're having these injuries, the playing time is shifting around. Were you throughout college, would you say that you were a good student throughout college? And if not, at the beginning, do you think that these shifts in playing times and the second guessing your decision made you become a better student because, oh, there is something that I'm going to have to, fall back on eventually?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say I was always a decent student. I didn't, I didn't excel in the academic field, but I did what I needed to do to stay eligible. I would say that. So went to class, did my work, did what I needed to do. But that was really, kind of my mindset of like sports really was number one. Like anything I needed to keep me on the court, keep me eligible. I was gonna get that done, and then uh, you know, like I said, put that attention. The attention was really on basketball, and I would say that even with all the setbacks and like the trials that I was going through at the moment, I think um, I don't know if I really. I know I mentioned like I was doubting myself and doubting whether I really could achieve the goal of becoming a professional athlete, but I think my mindset at the time was just basically like just try to figure it out. Like if it's meant to be, it'll happen. But I was still like mostly focused on just basketball, like trying to do whatever I could. And I was gonna, like I said, ride that wave until someone told me like the opportunity is just not there, and then figure out what I wanted to do. Basketball was completely taken out of the picture, but as long as I was playing, as long as I had eligibility, as long as I was still in college, like on the court, like that, that's what I was trying to do. That's what I was trying to be.
So let's now kind of we finished college, and I'm very curious because of clearly I'm never been a professional athlete. I don't know if you can tell through the camera. I wasn't gifted with tallness. Height was not a privilege of mine. Not necessarily. I mean, there's Muggsy Bogues and other opportunities there. But anyway,
Sure.
that's a side fact. So we're finishing college. What was the opportunities or the opportunity like from was it like a bunch of different things coming in, like, hey, do you want to do this, would you like to do this? Because I know you had some times overseas, but what was the I guess the spoonful of all of the opportunities that you had at the time, or was it, oh, hey, here's overseas, this is the opportunity, I'm going to take this?
So my senior year, as I mentioned, played at a school called Cal State San Marcos, and at the time it was an NAIA school. So back then, when you transfer schools, a Division One at least, you didn't get the luxury of I know the transfer rules are much different than nowadays than they where they were back then. And so I know at the time, like unless you were a grad student and you could transfer your credits right away. You didn't have to sit out, if I remember correctly. But since I still had to finish my undergrad, I would have had to sit out a year to play Division One again, um, which most schools wouldn't take a senior transfer who's still an undergrad. They only were taking grad students. So my only real option was to go a division down, or whether that was Division Two, Division Three, or NAIA. So this school kind of came in the picture because one of my teammates who played with me a couple years prior had transferred there. He was like, "It's a good opportunity." They take a lot of Division One kickbacks, guys who, for one reason or another, didn't work out with their situation. It was a new program. The coach had coached at UCLA, so he had high Division One, high major experience, and it just seemed like a really good opportunity. And so went out there. We put together this team of guys who were kickbacks, who had a lot of talent, and we ended up having a really good season. Finished 32-2. Um, we made it to the Final Four, the Elite Eight, or the NAIA conference or championship tournament, and I was an All American there. And so my the coach at the time had a close friend who was coaching in Japan, and he came to watch our practice, saw me play, fell in love with my game. Was basically like, I would love for Malcolm to come over and play for my team in Japan. And at the time, this was probably like May of my senior year. I had started talking to some agents, trying to figure out, like, all right, what's the process to go play overseas. And because this opportunity came before I even finished school, um, and I knew the coach, at least my coach had a good relationship with this guy. Like, it just seemed like a perfect situation where I wouldn't have to go through the process of agency, going to camps, trying out things of that nature. So that was how my first opportunity to play in Japan came about. I really just took the first thing that was on the table. And 3 months later, I was on a plane flying to Osaka, Japan, and gearing up for my first year as a pro. So I would say my rookie year happened very non-traditionally. Like, a lot of guys, they sign with an agent, they go to the camps during the summer, they'll go fly to trials and things of that nature. Whereas, like, I had an opportunity before I even finished school, and I just took the first thing that was on the table because it made sense for me. So that was how I ended up in Japan that rookie year. And then, yeah, I get into like the subsequent years playing overseas as well.
For a athlete who has never played overseas, what, you having played, college here and then in Japan and just overseas in general, what do you think in both of those experiences is the biggest difference from the mindset of a basketball player between those two markets?
So from college to playing professionally
Just,
overseas.
well, just essentially playing in the U.S. to playing overseas. Just those two comparisons.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I think for most athletes is the cultural adjustment off the court and just the lifestyle. And basketball obviously is a universal sport. That can kind of transcend across different countries and you can understand the language of basketball once you get on the court, but adapting to a new culture, new experiences and traditions, I think is really hard to do, especially like for a kid like me who, I'd never even been out the country before, and so you drop me off in Asia of all places, which is vastly different from the U.S. And the plan is to spend 9 months of your life there, and that's a lot for like a young 20-year-old who only knows what he knows and hasn't really had any experiences out of the realm of what he's used to. So the biggest adjustment I think definitely happens. It's more of a mental and emotional adjustment than it is physical. Well, I think it's obviously like the game is you're playing at a high level. It's more competitive. Guys are more experienced and things of that nature. But I think the hardest part for a lot of players is just wrapping your mind around being in a completely different environment than what you're used to and having to adjust to the way they do things and how it operates and certain customs that might be around just that specific that country.
So being like, going, man, I'm just like you reminding me that you're 20 years old at this point. I'm like, man, like you've never been out of the country. Now you're in Japan. You're playing professionally. Do you going back into that time frame? Do you remember what your I want to say like maybe interest level is the right term. What your commitment to learning Japanese was? Was it something where it's like, hey, like I'm gonna learn the basic words on how to get directions to here, or were you like, hey, I got 9 months here, I'm gonna try to learn as much as possible? What was that thought process like?
I was very open-minded. I was excited. I remember that. I was extremely excited to immerse myself in the culture. I heard great things about Japan, and for me, it was just like I'm going to go into this experience with as you know, open mind as I can possibly be, soak everything in. And so I don't think I was like, I'm going to learn the language right away. Like that was going to hopefully come with time. But from like experiencing the food to just, like I said, the customs, the traditions, how they do things, and like everything about their culture, I was willing to like try to adjust and adapt myself to what they're used to, what they're doing. So yeah, I think that was my mindset initially.
Was the team or the league that you were on, what were you uh, shocked by how many other non-Japanese players were in that league?
Um, I don't think I was shocked. So I think at the time, I was playing in the second or third tier league in Japan, and I want to say the rule that you could have up to three Americans on each team. Most of the teams I remember playing against maybe had two. So I knew I was going to go and like being there. There weren't going to be a lot of Americans. Like I think in some leagues in Europe, they can have up to like 5 or 6 Americans per team, or imports as they call them. And so Japan, I think, was structured a little bit differently at the time. So it was. I don't think it was a surprise. Like I had an understanding of what the team structure would look like going into it.
Well, I learned something new because I didn't realize that there were caps on. So it wasn't even, was it a international cap or a specific to America cap?
Yeah, international cap. So you can have I know back then they called us imports. So like you can have up to 2, 3 imports per team. Whether that was American player or, someone from the UK or France, like whoever you were bringing in, internationally, there was only a certain like only 3 players from a different country.
So before we get past this first journey here in Japan, I know you said that you kind of immersed yourself in the culture and the food and the traditions. What do you think was, looking back at it, your, aside from anything basketball related, what was your favorite part about being in Japan during that time?
That's a great question. I think looking back on my rookie year, it was probably the people. The people in Japan are very respectful. They're big on honor. They're big on loyalty. And I think I appreciated the way they take pride in their culture and their country and their communities. It's very clean. And so I think the people, the way they operated, um, really shocked me. Like one of the biggest things I remember is like coming into someone's house, everyone takes their shoes off. And then like bowing, like these things where I was like, I didn't really understand at the time, but the older you get, the more you travel, the more you see the world. Like you understand why certain cultures do certain things, and you come to appreciate it much more here. And I was grateful to have that experience as a young 20-year old. And I think like a lot of those things that I learned in Japan, I still do to this day. So when I come in the house, I take my shoes off. Like, that's something I never did growing up, but something I adapted or learned when I was playing in Japan. So I think just like the people were amazing, and just some of the traditions that I was able to take away and apply to my life are things I'm super grateful for.
And then my last question on this first stint here, this first professional gig in Japan is the fan difference between the fans that you had while you're in college in the U.S. and the Japanese fans of their own team there. What do you think is the biggest thing that you noticed was the difference there?
Um, I would say it varied from team to team. So like when we went to play some of the smaller teams, they had more of like a rabid fan base because their communities, maybe they played like in a small like rural area where their only form of entertainment, live entertainment, was the basketball team. So everybody came out. Whereas my second year I played in Tokyo, and there's endless things you can do besides coming to see a basketball game in Tokyo. Like the fan base in basketball, I would say, at least at the time, was maybe the fourth or fifth biggest sport. So they're not our fan base wasn't as crazy as some of the smaller towns that we got to play in, where it's like, oh, like they're really showing love and the signage, and they're yelling at us. And so I think just depending on the city or the community you were playing in, you kind of got a different feel. But I definitely think the game has grown a lot even since then. I still have some friends who are playing over there, and I mean, they come out, they show love, and they're basketball is definitely a growing sport. I think throughout Asia, probably definitely bigger in China, but Japan is definitely a growing market.
So how I know you just mentioned a second contract in Tokyo there. How long was your Japanese specific stint for your professional career?
So about 2.5 years, on and off. I came back home a couple times. I think the first year I played, I was over there for maybe 5 or 6 months. Came back home for a little bit, then went back and played in Tokyo for about a year, a little less than a year. So I would say like on and off about like 2 years or so.
And then now getting to the end of that period, does it was it just not getting another contract? You deciding, I did this. I don't want to be, playing in Japan anymore. What was the process that happened to end that 2.5 year stint?
Yeah, so after I ended up, so we missed the playoffs my second year playing in Tokyo. Ended up going home a little bit early, and I actually had another contract to play on another team in Japan right before I left. And the deal didn't get done in time before I was like my flight was about to head back. So I ended up coming home, was home for a few months, and I had a contract to go play in Morocco, in Tangier, Morocco, and I was set to leave. So I think I came home probably around like May. I was set to go play in. I think I got the contract probably around like October, and then I was set to leave to go play in Morocco around December, right before Christmas. And I remember like I had my bags packed, uh, flight ticket, all those things. Like literally, I was about to leave, like I think the next day or something like that, and I get a message from the agent I was working with at the time. He basically was like, the team has decided to go in a different direction. They're looking for a big, someone who can have this skill set, blah blah blah. It didn't match what I could do for the team, so they basically terminated my contract and went in a different direction. And being as it was around Christmas, I'm very close with my family. I'm very close to their family. And I think up until that point, I had been back and forth from overseas. My professional career, it was, it just wasn't the experience that I had pictured or imagined. Wasn't making the money that I expected to make. And so at the time, I was just like, my heart wasn't in it, and I decided that I was going to walk away, that day. It was December 23rd, 2017. And so that was when I kind of just was like, all right, I'm going to figure out my life. I had started to do some things on the side, or I mentioned earlier that I started to think about what I wanted to do life after basketball. My second year playing overseas, so I was like, hey, like this seems like the right time to walk away. And the last straw I think for me was like I was going to give myself a week of not doing anything, not working out, not lifting weights, not watching basketball, and see how I feel. And I think 2 weeks went by and I didn't feel anything about it. I was just like, if I can go this long without picking up a basketball, or working out, or putting in any time to get better at my craft, then it is time to walk away, because if you want to play at that level, you got to be doing something every single day. So that was the last straw. I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm gonna retire and try to figure out the rest of my life.
And then I know this is a 2 week break, during the holidays and everything, and then you just had that thought set of, okay, what's next? How long did it take you to figure out what was next?
Uh, Depends on how you define that. I would say in many ways, it took me a couple years to really uh, have clarity and like a vision, and like know like this is all right. This is what I'm gonna do. I did a number of different things after I was done playing, um, that I think in hindsight uh, helped me shape what I'm doing now and helped me build a lot of skills around what I'm doing now. But it took a long time and a lot of like trial and error to understand where my passions are, uh, what I want to be doing on a daily basis, what areas or industries I want to pursue a career in. And so, yeah, I would say it took me at least like 2 to 3 years of like maybe a little bit longer than that to really have like a foothold on or direction of where I wanted to take my life.
So I believe you mentioned the December getting contract terminated was 2017. So then we just said 2 or 3 years, and that kind of puts us around the COVID time. So when you did COVID affect your decision making? Where, like, let's say right before the whole thing happened, you're like, oh, I think this is what I want to do, and then did that shift it, or did that play a part in anything during your this post basketball growth phase?
Yeah, I would say COVID was definitely a pivotal moment for me. I would say from like 2018 to mid COVID, I was working in technology. So I actually got a job working in cybersecurity and was doing that for a while pursuing all these different like side hustles. Cause I mean, ultimately, like going back to my childhood, I was like, long term, I want to have my own thing. I want to build my own business. Just didn't know what that would be or what that would look like. So the whole time I was trying different ideas, kind of exploring this entrepreneurial drive that I had on the side. And I would say during COVID, towards the tail end of COVID is when I started to really kind of operate at this intersection of like sports technology, because I worked in technology, had an understanding of it, and then started to see a lot of activity around startups in sports and institutional capital. So that was kind of how I found my path. But I tried a number of different ideas throughout that time before COVID.
And then so now that, well, I mean, I guess I don't know what exact period we want to say the pandemic ended, because it's still
Yeah.
essentially lingering.
Right.
Uh, it's yeah, it's that was definitely a crazy time. So now that majority of that has passed, so now we're like in 2021, 2022. Now we're starting to solidify, okay, these are my interests, these are my passions. Now this is what I want to do in terms of a specific entity or business or concept. What kind of grew from that time period?
Um, so at that time, this was when like blockchain, NFTs, the metaverse was like everywhere. You couldn't read an article without someone mentioning it. And I started to kind of tap back into sports and um, figure out how I can leverage. I always had this interest in like writing and content. I was naturally good at it. I enjoyed creating content. So I was like, how can I combine like this love and this passion for like content and media and my interest, my experience working in technology, but also like this passion for the business of sports and how the whole ecosystem operated. So it was really kind of a combination of those things. And I saw a white space at the time where, I would read a lot of like sports business publications and follow a lot of platforms on social media. and I felt like there was this white space where you had all these emerging technologies that were impacting the fan experience and sports as a whole, but nobody was really going into depth as to how these things were shaping the future of sports and what their impact on the fan experience would be. And so that was like my foray into building what is now Vetted Sports, but it started as a company called the Hype Report, and it was really just a media platform that provided a insights and stories around companies who were building, in the blockchain, NFT, and sports intersection. So it was very niche and hyper focused around that. And it evolved over time, but that was like, okay, like I'm enjoying this. I have a passion for the tech side. I have a passion for, um, how sports consumer platforms and B2B platforms in sports, how they're changing, like their impact on the industry and things of that nature. So started very niche and then has grown over time. But that was really kind of the beginning of me figuring out, okay, this is a space where I see myself playing in a long time. How can I carve out a lane? How can I be a value add and really build something for myself here?
I'm curious about because I was definitely knee deep in the NFT stuff and all of that. I wouldn't say, I mean, they're still existing, but I still, whenever I refer to NITs, I always finish with RIP. Uh, but NFT RIP. But anyway, when you were focusing specifically on that category or and on the technology side of anything, Web3 blockchain, did you get like immediate success? Were you getting like a ton of people that were reading your content, or did it take like a few months or a year or what have you to actually start getting some viewers there?
It took some time. I mean, like I said, that's a very niche space, like sports and Web3. There's some people still building in that space now who I been able to form some relationships with, but um, I would say that it probably took at least like a year and a half to start seeing some actual traction and some real engagement. Yeah, it definitely didn't happen right away. I wouldn't say it was like a clear path or like, oh, this is a great opportunity. It was just like, I enjoy doing this. I'm going to do it on the side and see where it takes me. But I mean, there's no overnight successes, right? Like things take time.
So I'm curious. I'm kind of paralleling the experiences and the mindsets you had. The first one is your bags are packed. You're about to head off to your next contract. You're told 2 days before Christmas with your bags packed, hey, you're no longer going to be a professional player for us on this team. And
Hmm.
then this the mindset. I'm curious how similar or just the mindset of general of you created this brand, it's starting to get legs, and then the board apes go from $45 million per NFT to just arguably, let's just say like $1,000 or whatever. So you're seeing this downfall of this of NFTs as a whole, essentially, kind of start trickling down, where you already like, oh hey, if this falls apart, Vetted Sports is going to go this direction. Are you just like, oh, it's going to bounce back? Like when the NFTs market started to fall, what was your thought process during that time?
Yeah, I think I had started to broaden the scope of what I covered even before that happened. I'm not sure how long, but I started to, in the process of building this media platform and meeting founders and investors, I had also started to just meet people who were building just general sports tech companies, whether that was like sports betting or fan experience or data and analytics companies. Like I started to meet a lot of founders who were just in the sports industry, and so I was like, why am I just covering this specific lane? I'm starting to grow a little bit, build an audience, meet more people, and I had this idea of like broadening out the coverage and what I was actually trying to build. So I would say that definitely happened before like this downturn of the NFT market. Um, in in hindsight, I guess that was just it was luck, it was happenstance. Because I think if I would have stayed like focused on like sports and Web3, I don't think I would be where I'm at now. Um, but yeah, I think I was like just based off of the things that I was seeing and my interest had evolved and the people that I was meeting, I was just trying to see if I could broaden out the scope and create a bigger platform than just focusing on sports and or carve a bigger lane than just sports and Web3.
Yeah, but I mean, I know you said that was kind of like luck, but I feel like I also attribute that to your even going back to college, your business mindset where you know that like, hey, like this is a great idea, but this needs I want this to be bigger than what it is, just from a business side point or standpoint. And so you luckily, I mean, I guess you could say luck, but also business acumen, branched off a little bit. NFTs fall down, you still have this sports tech infrastructure that's still relative. So I know that you're still with Vetted Sports here today. So now I think there's, I believe, a 3 year gap from where we are in the story to right now in 2026. How has Vetted Sports changed, and then how has your mindset off of what you're doing at this point of your career shifted as well?
Yeah, it's changed in a lot of ways. So I actually rebranded to Vetted Sports at the towards the end of 2023. And really the impetus behind that was well, one, there was another company in the space called Hype Sports Innovation, and people were getting us confused. And then also I felt like I had outgrown the name. I wanted something that I could 100% own. I wanted to really create something that was more robust and really kind of own this lane of like sports is an asset class. So anything that makes sports investable, whether that is the sports tech side or, we cover emerging teams and leagues, we cover like ancillary assets around sports, such as real estate and mixed use venues. Like I wanted to build a platform that really encompassed all those factors. And Vetted Sports was, represented that to me. And so I think every business, at least in like conversations that I've had and other founders, like they go through a series of pivots, of evolutions, of changes. And a lot of that is based off new information and things that you learned along the way. And I say it really was no different for me. It was a accumulation of like things that I'm super passionate about, where I can provide expertise or some thought leadership, and then just trying to be a value add, and then just trying to figure out how you can actually turn this into something sustainable and that can drive revenue, and even that within itself has taken different shapes and forms. And I've done everything from consulting to sponsorships and advertising through building data products. I've really tried it all in this past like 3.5 years of me building this company. I would say now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, like I have built somewhat of a brand, have really high engagement, have built some trust amongst our audience and a community, and really trying to, establish, at the point where I'm like, all right, now is the time to really build something that's scalable, that I um, can build a team around, and that I can, supercharge. And so I'm at that point now. But like I said, it's trial and error, just really, sticking with it through and through, and trying to take things day by day to figure out, how to create something that has some staying power.
So we've essentially chronologically caught up to 2026. So I like to wrap these episodes up by you going through the entire chronological timeline of playing basketball at a very young age, knowing that was always going to be the plan, to right now, Vetted Sports being as big as it is. There's a bunch of different things that happen that were inside of your control and outside of your control. I always refer to these as the butterfly effect. I believe I kind of already know what your answer is going to be to this, but I still want to see, out of all the things that happened, which individual butterfly effect, whether it was in your control or out of your control, do you attribute to where you are today?
What do you think I'm going to say?
Well, based on, I feel like it can go one of two ways, but I think that if you took that, if you, I mean, you did take the basketball opportunity, but if that basketball opportunity worked out, I don't know if you would have started something as early as you did in the NFT space, in the sports tech space, that would have led you to the point to where you could have survived the fall of the NFT. So I feel like everything probably would have happened anyway, but everything would have happened maybe 2 or 3 years after the fact it did. And I feel like the timing was the perfect thing for how everything transpired, from you getting that phone call, hey, by the way, you're not on the team, to 2026. So my guess, which I, out of all of these episodes, I've never had somebody ask me to guess, but that would be my guess, would be that scenario, because it's timing's everything.
You're spot on, man. I think about timing a lot, man. Like in life, there's situations to your point that are out of your control. Some are in your control, but all of it shapes, the direction or where you end up ultimately. And I think that I often think about like, okay, if I didn't transfer my senior year, where would I be? Or if I, to your point, took that contract, where would I be? If I kept playing and didn't, call it quits, where would I be? And so I think in my perspective, everything happens for a reason. Like that was supposed to happen. This is supposed to happen the way it was supposed to happen. But that moment to me, yes, was very pivotal in terms of, okay, closing this chapter of my life. Let's figure out the next 50 years, hopefully, of what this journey is going to look like. And that was completely within my control. I was healthy, man. Like I could have kept playing, up until you know, God forbid, an injury or like whatever the case may be. Like I a lot of my boys are still playing overseas. Like I believe I could have had a very successful career, and possibly could still be playing basketball to this day. But like I said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in time. And those experiences, the things that I went through, the decisions that I had control over, and the ones that I didn't, kind of shaped my path, my journey, and why I'm here speaking to you today. So,
All right. Well, Malcolm, I appreciate you hopping on here and sharing your story of how you got here. Now, if anybody wants to reach out to you or learn more about Vetted Sports, how can they do that?
um, very responsive on LinkedIn, Malcolm Lemmons. Also shoot me email, malcolm@vetedsports.com. And our website is vetedsports.com for anybody who wants to check us out.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. There's plenty more before this and that'll come after this. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks again, Malcolm.
Appreciate you.